Hello, this is Michael Rose, and the subject of this video is a review of the automated tests that I wrote for the Tic Tac Toe web application game, which was sent as a part of the Calendly QA engineer take-home assignment. So this is the README file, and I chose to write my automated tests using Robot Framework for several reasons. Number one is that I really like the way that Robot Framework allows you to write automated tests in really a plain text format, which I'll demonstrate. And so your automated test reads like a document, but it's tied to executable code, which is Python in my case, but you can use other languages like Ruby if you choose to implement your keywords. And the second reason that I chose Robot Framework is that I have a lot of experience using it in my current job at ICE, where I write and maintain Selenium tests for several of our internal web applications for employees. Okay, so with that being said, we can jump into a few of the test suites and see what they look like. So I wrote 3 for this assignment. I thought that a good way to organize the tests for these games was to have kind of a suite where you can test the different ways where you could start a game. You can have a test suite for different ways that you can play a game and check conditions that should hold true during gameplay. And then I have another one where I check the different results that are possible, like winning with either letter or a draw, or I think those are all the results. Okay, so we can go kind of in that order. So this is the new games test suite that I wrote in Robot Framework, plain text. You can see at the top that I have some documentation and settings. So in these tests, and for all the tests in this suite, we'll start out by going to the Tic Tac Toe site. And once we're there, we'll create a game with different board sizes, and then check that the board is the expected size, and that the board is empty to begin with, and those sort of conditions. And then once the test is complete, the game board will be empty. So to start out with, and just a note, I'm running these tests on a Mac, so these will launch in Safari. I created a variables file where I define not only the browser Safari, but also some locators on the page that I used for testing. But yeah, I just wanted to note that I'm doing the testing in Safari, and that's how I uploaded the code to GitHub. So if you choose to pull it down and run it yourself, and you're not on a Mac, you might want to change the browser there. Okay, so back to the test suite. So we have 5 tests in this suite. Start a new standard game. So this is a 3x3 tic-tac-toe board. So I expect that when I enter the number 3 and click play, I'll have a 3x3 game board displayed. Since you can do different board sizes, I wanted to do a test for a non-standard game such as 6, so that's what the second test is for. And the rest of these, well, at least this next one, I noticed that if you click the play button multiple times, it kind of messes up the board. So I put an automated test in there that will fail, because you shouldn't be able to alter the game board by clicking the play button multiple times. I checked that once you go to the site, the game board should not be visible, and that's kind of, I think, debatable. One of my recommendations was that, most people, when they're going to play tic-tac-toe, I've never played a game that was not on a 3x3 board, so It'd probably be a good user experience to just start out with a 3x3 board so you could just start playing. But, ooh, typo. But that was just personal preference. And then, since that's an input field with no really restrictions there on the Tic Tac Toe site, I just want to make sure that if you put something that's not a number, then the game board should also not be displayed. Probably there could be an error message, but I think as long as it doesn't do something funky, that's fine for our purposes. All right, so let's run some tests. So this is the new game test suite. It's defined by the file name here, newgame.robot. So I'm gonna open up a terminal in my IDE and run just that suite. And I've defined here an output directory which will contain reports after the tests run. So I guess one other note before I run the tests, this video is taking longer than I thought it would. I created a resource file where I define some of these keywords that I mentioned. So you can see this go to Tic Tac Toe site, which is in the setup of the new game file. I've defined in the resource file where we launch a browser, go to the game URL, and I configured a couple settings here to make when I run these tests, to make it a little more easy to see, since Selenium executes quite quickly by default. So I did like a little over 1/10 of a second delay between steps, and I enlarged the window so it'd be easier to see in the video. And then the tic-tac-toe game is actually in an iframe, so I just select that in this setup. So that's the one thing that I wanted to note before I run the tests, which I will do now. So I've got my command queued up, and I'll press enter, and these tests are going to run in a different screen, so that's what's going on here. So test number 1, this is the 3x3 board. So that was just to make sure that the correct size board is there, and that's a table, so I just verify the number of columns and rows. And here we do the 6x6 board. Alright, next test, another browser will launch. And all these tests are independent of each other, so each one launches a new browser, so you can run individual tests in whatever order. That last one was a test failure. We'll look at the report in a second. And that is it. Okay, so all the tests ran. There were 4 passes and 1 failure, and the results were written to this output directory that I defined. So I'm going to open that in another browser, not Safari. And this is what the report looks like. We can dig into all the tests and see we had that no board is being displayed by default, and the creation of standard and non-standard boards and handling non-numeric input test was okay. The one test failure, like I mentioned, was that if you click that play button multiple times, it displays a non-standard or an unexpected number of columns and rows in the table. So yeah, so I expected there to be 3 rows and 3 columns. There are actually 3 columns and 6 rows, which is unexpected. See, game board should be displayed 3x3, and it captured a screenshot to illustrate that failure. Okay, so that's the new game test suite. There are 2 more test suites. I'll run through both of those, and then we can run all the tests together and evaluate the overall quality of the app. So let's start with gameplay. I really only came up with 2 scenarios that I thought were important for gameplay. One thing that I wanted to verify is just that when I click in a cell on a particular letter's turn, the expected letter appears in that cell. So I wrote some custom keywords here by extending Robot Framework's Selenium library, and you can read a little bit how I did that in the README file. So this enter X and enter O in table cell, you give it 2 arguments, the row and column that you want to input the letter, and then the keyword will click there in that row and column, and then make sure that the expected letter shows up in the cell. And I did that in Python because I like Python. I have the start a new game keyword as well. These are all keywords in Robot Framework. I won't go into too much detail, but I just wrote a couple functions here. Throw an error if you try to input like an X and it's O's turn, and otherwise it just clicks in the table cell and then make sure the expected letter shows up, and then I have like an attribute of this object that alternates X and O to keep track of whose turn it is. Okay, so that's a little bit about that. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I could fill up all the cells in a table. And I believe this ends up as a draw, so there's no winner declared at the end. And then the other thing that I wanted to verify is that if you click multiple times in a single cell, it won't do anything. Like if I click in the top left and it's X's turn, it should put an X, but then if I try to do that in the same cell for O, the cell's already occupied, it shouldn't do anything. So I want to make sure that there is no O in that cell after trying to click in there. And that's kind of what's going on here. I expect an error to be thrown by that keyword that I wrote. Okay, so that's those 2 test cases, and then the last one is the game results. So this will be fairly straightforward, and most of the tests in this suite fail because the wrong winner is declared, which I'm sure you know already. So for this, I put X's in the top row and O's in the second row. Since X goes first, X should win, and they do not, because, well, they do, but the game doesn't say so. So that test fails. So I test that you can win by getting numbers or letters in a row, and then letters in a column, and then letters in a diagonal. All those tests fail. This next test fails. A game should be drawn if there's no winner, because it's kind of confusing if you've finished the game and there's no winner. It just kind of hangs there, and there's no message that the game's over, that it was a draw, that you need to refresh again. So that test fails because there's no draw message. Last one, I noticed that after the game is over in a win scenario, when there's more empty cells left on the board, that you can click behind kind of the banner that shows up, and letters can be input still, and actually the result can change too. So I wrote a test that fails in that scenario where X wins and then the banner is shown, but if you try to click behind it in one of the table cells, you can actually get an O in there, but you shouldn't be allowed to do that, or there should be some error. And I wrote I tried to illustrate another thing that I like about Robot Framework, where you can kind of create your own keywords in this plain text format based off of other existing keywords. So since we're not really concerned in this game should be drawn test case about, okay, what are my individual moves, we just care about making a result that ends in a draw. So I created a keyword to fill a 3x3 board so there's no winners. So just kind of fill that grid so there's no rows, columns, or diagonals occupied by a single letter. And then that just shows up as one line, so it makes the test case more readable. Try and finish this video before my battery dies. So let's run all the tests now. There are 12 in total. So I'm going to do that by just, all the tests are living in this Tic Tac Toe directory, so I'll just give it that, and we'll write the output to the same file, or same directory, so that I can just refresh that page in the browser. So you're going to see some of the same tests again from the original new game suite. So here, this is actually the gameplay, or game results test. Actually, I don't know which one this is. I don't know what order it's running in. That was playing a standard game. All right, back to the tests. So this is checking that you can't change the letter of an already occupied cell. That one passes. This one, X should be the winner, but we actually get O, so that's a failure. This one will be X in a column on a 2x2 board. No matter what happens in a 2x2 game, X will win, so. Alright, this is a 4x4 board, and O wins in the diagonal, but the app declares X the winner. It's a bug. And the last test in this gameplay suite, this is expect to be a draw. Well, it is a draw, but I expect our application to tell me that, and it does not. Nobody's going to win this game. Draw, but no message. There should be a similar banner, and there's not. All right. A couple more tests to go. So that was the test case. You saw at the end, O was added in the bottom right. After the game was over, shouldn't be able to do that. That was a fast one. I don't know what test that was. All right, so this is checking that you can just start the game and the expected number of cells show up. We saw this one already, so we're almost done. Not a number, shouldn't do anything, and does not. And that is all the test cases. We can open up Chrome again, or I guess do it this way. Took some screenshots. Open in browser. There we go. So 12 tests in total, 6 pass, 6 fail. You can see a tabular breakdown. So this game should be drawn if no winner. There wasn't a message, so no result was declared. No input should be possible after a game is ended. We had an unexpected error. There was content found. This is a message that I chose. It sounded good when I wrote it. Now it's not so easy to understand. So row 3, column 3 should have been an O, but something else was there. In other words, an error. The test failed. Let's dig into the test and see why it failed. I expected there to be an error, and there was not an error. We successfully entered O into the cell. So that's why that's a failure. All right. And these 3 tests all failed because the wrong winner was declared. We expected O to be declared the winner, but X was. These 2 tests, we expected X to be the winner, but O was declared the winner. And then the last test case, clicking play multiple times should not affect the board. We saw that example in the first suite, but I'll open it up again. So yeah, this should have been a 3x3 board, and it's this. I don't know exactly how I guess you can only win kind of in the columns and rows. That's a weird tic-tac-toe variant. Shouldn't happen like that. Okay, so that's my tests. I have uploaded this to GitHub, but I'll attach this video to the README here in a minute and submit the assignment. I guess a couple more notes, and I've detailed this all in the README. There are a couple requirements if you want to run these tests yourself. You need Python 3.3 or later. If you have a standard distribution of Python, you'll have pip to install the packages that are required by this project, which are in the requirements.txt file. And finally, you need a WebDriver that is supported by Robot Framework Selenium library, which is all the major WebDrivers for all the major browsers. I chose Safari again because I'm on a Mac, and Safari driver comes with Macs nowadays. We've got my feedback from the testing, which is all. I just put that in the README instead of putting that in a separate document. It'll be in a table that you can see on GitHub. And then I've got my answer for question number 2. And that's about it. All right. So, yeah, thank you so much for listening to me for the last 10-15 minutes. I really appreciate the opportunity. And please let me know if you have any questions about my project or these tests. All right.